My name is Panda and I play T-Tech, Splash, Stamper, and E-Leader.
I am Tiger. I mostly play Slushing Machine and Tri-Slusher.
I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Bruce Lee said that, but I'm not Bruce Lee, I'm Plagued. Crack on really one trick you've seen playing for Alluring Airfare.
My team will win because I think we have some pretty good coordination, and we can show them that we're coming back harder.
Efficient Effectiveness seem to think that a full aggressive team is the most efficient way to take the finals, but they fail to see that Alluring Airfare has just the composition to shut their aggression down and lock them out. A once thought unstoppable force meets a now proven immovable object.
My team will win because we're very flexible, and we all play a variety of different weapons, and I believe that will play to our advantage.
Undoubtedly, it's Panda. They and I have gone back and forth in the qualifiers between being best buds and worst enemies, starting in the beta bracket of all things, before rising up to unified glory in the finals. Unfortunately, fate has said that only one of us can win despite our shared underdog story, and I plan to be the greater half.
My biggest rival is Plague. We're pretty good friends. We played with each other in some other qualifiers, but right now we're going for the gold, and so now he is my biggest rival.
It's 100% Yaru. Yaru is such a good individual player and has the highest X power in the tournament, so...
It's day 2 of the FABL Finals, and today marks the grand conclusion of the event. Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness are set to face each other once again after yesterday's spectacle. Yaru, Plague, Centrite, and Bunny will represent the Airfares. Yaru is a formidable opponent with an impressive 2800 X-Rank power, but Plague proved their worth in the qualifiers and even climbed up to 3rd place on the leaderboard. As for effectiveness, Tiger, Zero, Panda, and Qual will all be playing. Tiger holds the highest spot on the leaderboard, coming in 2nd place, while Qual brings in a wealth of draft experience as a veteran of IDTJ and one of the 17 All-Stars. The teams are locked in, the stage is set, and FABL ends now.
And welcome everybody to day 2 of the FABL Finals. 6 qualifying events, worked down to 8 teams. The top 32 players now down to the final 2 teams, Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness. It has been an absolute gauntlet to get this far, and we could not be prouder to bring you the action today. My name is NineWholeGrains, and I am joined by my co-caster, ShinyHunterZac, and our ace analyst, Stratagem of Squid School. How are you two doing today?
Well, thank you, Nine. It's great to be back. I mean, these 2 teams have really put in work, and they've had a little bit of differing journeys, of course, with Alluring Airfare only dropping a single game to get to the grand finals to their opponent today, Efficient Effectiveness, who had to come down into the losers finals and put up a strong fight against a Coral counter-argument team who had their own trials and tribulations all the way from the start of losers to get to the losers finals and unfortunately lose it there 4-1. So these 2 teams, we got to hear a little bit about them beforehand. They were talking smack to each other. They were exchanging blows a little bit. Very interested to see how long this one goes today.
And Jen, let's just dive right into analyzing these 2 teams, because Efficient Effectiveness looked like an entirely different team versus Alluring Airfare. And all the other sets we spectated of EE, they looked dominant. They were moving quick. They were identifying targets, moving in, getting through. And then against Alluring Airfare, it all kind of fell to pieces despite a deceptively close 4-1. What are your thoughts on these 2 teams and what we can expect to see?
So there are a few things on Alluring Airfare that are going to cause some extra problems for the rushdown style that Efficient Effectiveness is trying to play. On Efficient Effectiveness, you're going to have Zero, you're going to have Cool, and you're going to have Tiger in some combination rushing one target at the same time constantly. They're just always trying to go in whenever they can set up any kind of play like that. But Alluring Airfare throws a few wrenches into that plan. You've got Yaru, first of all, who is the highest X-Power player in the league, and it's not even particularly close. They've got a max of 2,861, and I think the next highest is only like 2,500 something. It's definitely a pretty big skill gap there between Yaru and everybody else. So that's one problem that they've been running into, that this 52 player, playing 52 for the majority of what we saw yesterday, can just put up the wall and play like that Kensa 52 gal that we know from Splatoon 2, wall one player off while winning a different 1v1 and then taking the second 1v1 and basically being able to 1v2 someone. That's a big problem for a team that's just trying to rush at you and overwhelm you from 2 different directions. Then they've also got to worry about Plague, who is going to be constantly sharking on this Krakon roller. You can't rush in quite as quickly against something like a roller, because if you do that and leave one little speck unpainted, the roller is going to be sharking in that and is going to stop you. So that's a playstyle that's going to necessarily slow down Efficient Effectiveness a little bit, Otherwise, they're going to give the roller doubles and triples by rushing in a little bit too quickly. Finally, you've also got Centratide playing these hard backline weapons. We weren't seeing a lot of chargers in the previous matches, and a charger is a weapon that you really have to play around in a particular way. It's going to lock down a particular area of the map, going to make it difficult to exist on that side of the map, and you have to push based on where they are, which is a little bit more reactive. So Efficient Effectiveness just are running up against a number of players that they can't really rush down in quite the same way. And so they're going to have to play a little bit differently to make it work. They still can step on the gas when they get a pick or something, but it's going to be a matter of trying to find that, of maybe leaning on a special that Panda can pull out, or isolating a player here and there and getting a pick and then starting to snowball that way. If someone's able to take down Yaru, if someone's able to find where Plague is or spot out Centratide, little things like that can make it so that they can find the engagements they're looking for. But they're going to have to be maybe just the tiniest bit more careful than we've been seeing them be so far in the league.
And for those of you who enjoy Gems analysis, you definitely should be, all of you enjoying Gems analysis. You're going to get a lot of it today because we have a new format, a Showdown format, a lovely format, and we'll be going back to the analyst desk between every single game. Take a look at this, folks. Read them and weep. It is a best of 9 and a very unique best of 9 at that. You're going to be starting off with a predetermined map mode, and at that point, a lot of picks and a lot of bans. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we get further and further into the event. The teams are getting ready here, and I do want to note that the teams will be competing for a custom backpack, which is a very useful and ergonomic thing to be winning, and also a wonderful title, The Legends of FABL, which is just legend, fable, working it both together. I see you. It's alliterative in an odd sense if you squint and tilt your head a little bit. Zach, I cannot wait to see what these two teams are going to have in store because it's all led up to this.
Yeah, the rarities here are abundant in terms of the rewards and the fights and the format itself, the Showdown format, even the fact that it's a best of 9. One thing that's not so rare is starting out on Zone's Hagglefish. Definitely some discussion between the teams about whether they would want to play this mode or not, whether it's fatigue or burnout from having played it so much or just wanted to shake things up a little bit. I heard some cries for Umami to be played in this pool, but unfortunately the pool already being set up. But keep these couple of rivalries in mind, Tiger versus Yaru being one of them. We heard from Gem how Yaru being basically the top elo player in this tournament, and Tiger absolutely dominating the finals yesterday, doing such a fantastic job on both the Tri-Slosher and the Sloshing Machine. The other one being Panda versus Plague. They play two very different styles and weapons, with Plague essentially one-tricking that crack on Splat Roller, and Panda mainly holding it down on that Vanilla Splash-O-Matic, being one of those reformed anchor or backline players to use that weapon.
Well, we have a lovely little flyover here, folks. I, again, love the production value that has gone into it. Our grand finals starting out. Read them and weep, folks. Take a look at it. Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness, two rivals that have battled time and time again. And Zach, no surprises on the weapon select screen.
Yeah, none at all. I mean, Keeler's only played one of two weapons, either the Octobrush that they're playing now or the Dark Tetra Dualies, either of which would have been a decent pick, I think, for this map and mode combination. Yaru, it showed 5 weapons under them, but they've really been holding on to this 52 gal strong here. Same thing for Tiger, a couple of weapons at their disposal, but they really popped off in the final games of their last set with that Sloshing Machine, and I think for a one-zone map, it's a solid pick.
Solid pick indeed. Yaru moving forward there, really almost single-handedly, and I don't think the other members of Efficient Effectiveness pulled it out in time to crash in on that. Typically, when one player charges forward, it's a little bit telegraphed, especially when you can put out the wall. Whether respect or not reading it, they did not crash in, and Yaru is making them pay to go down at the end of Yaru before Panda finally gets it and snowballs into a hit onto Centratide. But Centratide had a little bit of a laugh as well, breaking that crab tank. Now Plague is diving in to make another play on top of that, and Kular may have the recipe to get through this zone and take out Centratide, but no! Centratide gets another shot, desperately tries to escape from Tiger. Does not appear that that retreat was successful, and all out in the wash. Efficient Effectiveness has a real great opportunity here at a hold, Zach.
Well, speaking of successful, efficient effectiveness able to give that penalty just barely over, and we already got to see some of those rivalries play out. We saw Panda essentially sitting on top of that uninkable tent, defending against Plague, who actually just went down there. Centratide now forced way back where before they were able to sit on that box and pull area right in the middle of the zone. That's where you want your anchor to be in a good position to set up, but for now, at least, they have their tri-strike available. The lead going to go over to efficient effectiveness here. They don't have any specials to counter at the moment. They just have the tri-strike, but with their main weapons on top of that for some extra pain, they're holding down the zone for now.
Yeah, they actually picked out exactly where Plague was moving forward there, and Yaru almost got taken out, but I believe it was a great shot from Centratide to take a player out, has stabilized this entire situation. Folks, don't forget what Chargers are able to do. One shot can completely equalize, and that at least gave them some breathing room in a dangerous situation. Now, where are they going to move Plague in? We heard the teams bantering back and forth earlier. Somebody saying that it's not real flanks here. You just think that it's a flank. And it does look like Plague went on the bottom of the screen to try to make that happen. That may have taken just enough focus away from the other members, and Plague may have actually won that fight too. So a double duty there, getting people away from the zone and then taking out the players. Now Centratide's up in a good position with the protection from Yaru. That's another two that are going down. They do have a special at the ready. Will they use it? Will they even be able to preserve it? That's going to be a Crab running away. How often do you see that? As Plague now chases forward. There's just a few seconds left for the lead as Tiger now goes down to Plague's valiant charge. Another goes down, and they're going to have to make one desperate play here for the zone.
Yeah, Plague was attempting to recreate some deja vu there, going back to that uninkable tarp there. They were able yet again to get one pick, but they're going to need to press forward here. Efficient effectiveness doesn't have any specials, and they're pretty far away. I don't think they're even going to be able to have any semblance of an impact on the zone. They get the tri-strike right in their face as they attempt to come back, and after a little bit of a scare, Alluring Airfare showing why they were able to make it to this point through winners finals by taking game one.
And for those of you who may have watched yesterday's action, you'll know a little bit of a scare seemed to be the tagline for the Alluring Airfare victories multiple times. A game dangerously close to being taken back the other way by efficient effectiveness. You saw it a little bit in that game as well, but Centratide with a great shot. Plague taking some focus away from the zone as the other members moved up. It just seems to be the formula that works out for them here. And Gem, I'm really, really curious to see what you noticed in that game, especially in those big moments of take back.
I'm really liking the way that efficient effectiveness has been able to start tracking down Plague. There were a couple of instances, especially early on, where they're staying grouped up enough and getting enough paint control that when Plague started to try and go in, someone just painted over them, caught them out, got a pick. And that happened a number of times, and that set them ahead enough to be able to get the pushes they were getting. But man, are they having some trouble dealing with the Yaru and Bunny front line. They are getting picked off left and right as they try to contest the zone, especially. The first push that AA got in there, it was just one after the other. The pick went out on 0 first, and then that led to them collapsing on Cool on the left side, and then Tiger tried to push in on the right and went down, and then they caught 0 running away on the switchback. It was just all the way back into the enemy base. And if Plague hadn't overextended a little bit on that Kraken, gone in with no hope of being able to come back out, they might have been able to hold there even stronger. So that was definitely dangerous for them there. EE does do a good job of being able to push back in after that even then. But at the end of the day, it just came down to a couple of fights where Yaru was able to pair off well with their teammates and get some good fights for them that were able to win the numbers advantages and get that paint control. Both teams doing a great job of pushing up and taking more space when they get the opportunity. If anything, maybe taking a little too much space so that they can't actually hold that ground. But so far, pretty evenly matched in terms of the fights, all things considered. Just came down to AA being able to put together a longer hold, getting the picks when they needed to get them to be able to cap that zone. And great awareness on Bunny's part to put those strikes on the zone right at the end is kind of a GG special to be able to finish things off.
Yeah, Bunny kind of the unsung hero, and I'm glad that you pointed out what that front line is able to do. I think we focused so much on what the non-shooter players on that roster bring, especially using weapons that a good chunk of the player base and certainly a good chunk of our viewing audience may not be familiar with seeing the unique technology that they bring to the table. But speaking of unique, take a look here at the map screen. We can finally chat for a moment here about this Showdown format, if you will. You can see here we have 16 lovely maps. This was the map list for the event, 4 of each mode, and a few different maps sparsed among that. How it'll work here is, of course, we already have our first game done. At this point, one team bans and one team selects. The winning team puts in the ban, and the losing team then gets to select from anything on here. Once that has been chosen, that is it for those. The losers of the previous game can pick any map or mode combination that has not been previously played or banned. So that is why a best of 9 and 16 map modes, with one being picked every time, one being banned every time. 16 divided by 2 is 8, one already picked. You can kind of understand how a best of 9 is reached here with some simple mathematics. And Zach, I'll tell you, it makes things a lot easier for us here in the caster booth, and I have to think for the players, it probably makes it a little easier as well.
Well, and you see on your screen here, we're already saying goodbye to a staple of high-level tournaments, with that being Inkblot tower control. So with that out of the way, the pick instead goes to Sturgeon Shipyard for the same mode. And this is not a slouch either in terms of seeing its fair share of play in high-level Splatoon. Of course, for the map itself, you have lots of height variation. You have checkpoints that are pretty open. You have some checkpoints that are elevated, of course, and Centratide, if they're going to stick with that ZF splatter scope, may have a field day if they're able to get on the tower and basically hide around that pole and get picks the way that they want to. I definitely am looking at Plague again on that Crack-On Splat Roller. They were causing havoc in the backline, getting 1 to 2 picks and being a distraction for at least 3 members of Efficient Effectiveness, and I don't foresee them switching off of that weapon anytime soon.
The planes fly high and the action sure to go sky high. Take a look here at what the changes are. It appears for the time being not a whole lot coming out from either team. QLAR, the big question, if it's going to be Tetras or if it's going to be the Octobrush. And Tetras tend to not be a popular pick on this particular mode. And Zach, Efficient Effectiveness looked very, very strong on tower control in previous sets, but with already 2 down here, I'm not sure where that strength was left.
Yeah, speaking of strong, Alluring Airfare, one of their consistencies has been the strength of their composition and their stars. We see Yato, I think that was 2 at least to get going, and they're only going to be taken down by the sloshing machine there of Tiger. We highlighted that rivalry or matchup at the start, just barely able to dodge between 2 out of the 3 tri-strike shots as Alluring Airfare gets halfway through that first zone, but importantly, does not clear it, although they do possess the tower once again. They fall 3 members at least on the side of Efficient Effectiveness, and Panda once again trying to be that backline, but 9, there's that Kraken Royale for Plague that we were just discussing.
Well, it's so frustrating when you're the only player left on your team. There's really nothing to distract that Kraken, and it's going to get 2 or 3 cracks, no pun intended, at taking you down. Makes it a lot easier, and speaking of easy, usually there's some contest on this checkpoint. Those tri-strikes will come in to ward a player off, but they don't get anybody as Plague and Yaru march forward here. Yes, Panda was able to stabilize a little bit with a crab tank, but already down to 17. Zach, this is a winning push in most games on this map.
Well, and you highlighted the relationship with Bunny and the rest of Alluring Airfare at the start there. Unfortunately, going to go down to Tiger, but before that was basically the bodyguard of Centratide, who wanted to not necessarily always be on the tower, but be near it enough, but have the sight lines to be able to take down any players that were coming their way, and that's exactly what they got with an important pick onto QLard there. That player now having built up enough special to have a zip caster, but once again they will fall, so really not being able to make the best use of that Octobrush with the maneuverability and the ability to get into the backline of Alluring Airfare, which again has caused Alluring Airfare to take the zone back, and really, maybe even more importantly right now, since they've gotten to 17, hold on to this control in mid.
Well, and I think you can see how frustrating a game this has been. Look no further than where Panda has had to use Crab. Nearly every single Crab that Panda has used either was forced backwards, had to run away, or was all the way back as a final defensive resource here. Whether it's because there's just not a lot of protection, which I know sounds like a bonkers concept to think about, of that Crab, it means that that special, which is so good at clearing areas, identifying targets, and helping your team push forward, has never had the opportunity to do any of that.
And we see Zero Waffle here, a player we also haven't really talked about. That's essentially a mirror match against Bunny on that 10 attack. 3 down, forced against efficient effectiveness. And yet again, it's Panda being the last one remaining, fighting a 1v2 against Yaru and Bunny, who will eventually clean it up here. Now looking for Tiger, but Bunny very patient in terms of their playstyle, knowing that one of the biggest benefits of them staying alive is getting that tri-strike up for when they want to keep a push going. They're going to get the tower moved a little bit forward here in the remaining 2 minutes, looking for a pick onto said Zero Waffle. But again, this high ground positioning, so important, whether you're playing that anchor or backline position or just using your special, a crab tanker, in this case a tri-strike. And the map control, yet again, not moving anywhere. That frees up Yaru especially so much to not only be in a good position to throw that splash wall and still have enough ink to move forward, but to build those killer whales and allow players like Plague to do the offensive work. And getting a double there shows exactly how effective that is. They're going to get to the last checkpoint, 1 point remaining. Tiger, the only person shutting it down, but just temporarily. And in yet again, a dominant fashion, Alluring Airfare showing no cracks or weaknesses on Sturgeon Shipyard.
Yeah, I mean, stunning. If the last set between these two showed a lot of games where Alluring Airfare made some big mistakes and almost gave efficient effectiveness chances, there were none to be found right there. Zach, you brought up a great point that I'll highlight here before we send it to Jem, and that was Bunny's understanding on that left side to not go in an attack and instead survive, hold the position, can almost be seen as a microcosm of how that game went entirely, where players understand that as long as the objective is moving, if they take up other members of the team's attention span or their specials even, that means that on one case, they're going to get to move the objective forward a little further, and if they rotate back, they'll tend to rotate back too late. And it's the understanding that these players can each bring something to the table in those individual moments that's fantastic. And Jem, this might be the most dominant game we've seen between these two teams. What did you see?
Yeah, that definitely looked pretty rough for EE there. Plague and Yaru are just forming an unmovable wall in the middle of the map there. As soon as Tiger tries to poke in on one of the sides, runs into a splash wall, forced to back up, either gets hit from the side by the roller or allows the team to collapse on his teammates on the opposite side of the map. Is having a really hard time trying to figure out how to get in against those weapons. On top of that, we saw some great Kraken plays there from Plague. Whenever there was a situation where attention was drawn to one side of the map, the Kraken was coming in from the other side, and we saw a great double there off the sacrifice from Yaru going down on the enemy scaffold. And in the meantime, the tower's just pushing the whole way. I think they should definitely worry a little bit more about their openings. In their openings, people are consistently going down across both of these games, and that's giving AA specifically a lot of map control, a lot of paint control early on that EE is having a really hard time fighting against. Tiger's trying to rush into enemy ink and is getting caught out because they can't move anywhere. I think if they're able to win that opening, they have a chance to get their own paint down and really, establish some paint control that they can use to start this aggression. Because right now, they're just kind of charging into enemy territory instead of making that territory their own first. And it's making it just a little bit too easy for AA to spot out what their plans are going to be.
Well, I'll pass it back to you one more there, Jem, because last time that we analyzed these two teams, you kind of noted that because of all these different distractions and the way that these players were playing, it took away efficient effectiveness in terms of how they were looking against literally every other opponent they played. So I'm curious here as the teams start to get set, what in particular do you do here if you're efficient effectiveness to either step aside from what that is doing? I mean, this looks like a completely different team.
I think that they can play a very aggressive play style, but they're going to need to pick their moments a little bit more carefully. I think they need to spend a little bit of time letting Panda paint up and maybe get a crab tank or a special to get them in. And then off of that advantage, maybe they can start pushing in with some momentum and snowballing and whatnot. But against most of the other teams, Tiger has been able to just go in and 1v3 people. And that's not working anymore against players of this caliber. They're going to need to set Tiger up with something. So they need to gain some kind of advantage first and then push in. And right now I feel like they're just pushing in before they have an advantage. And this is a team that is really well equipped to actually counter that aggression and punish them for overcommitting if they go for something that's just a little bit too risky. So I'd like to see them playing around, starting things off with a special and then stepping on the gas, rather than being on the gas the whole time and running themselves into this brick wall.
Well, if there was ever a stage to build up a special and use that to open it up, it will be Scorch Gorge, and it is Rainmaker. Zach, we have seen this map mode more times in the past 2 days than I think I've seen it in the past month. An interesting choice here from Efficient Effectiveness.
Well, first of all, Alluring Airfare leaving nothing to chance, banning on both opportunities Inkblot Art Academy, so that is no longer in the equation here for Efficient Effectiveness. But we go to a quite popular in this tournament series map and mode combination because of how crazy it can be. Rainmaker on Scorch Gorge, we've seen some absolutely dominant performances here from Yadu, from Plague in the past, so that's going to be a tough hill to climb from Efficient Effectiveness. But you brought this up earlier, Nine, that Efficient Effectiveness always at least once per these games seems to find a little niche to carve themselves into a pretty solid push that they can get going. They just have to capitalize on what they're learning each time from those little pushes, open it up a little bit more so that Tiger has that same room to excel that Yaru has. And in taking a look at the compositions, we're going to see Zero Waffle going off of that Tenatech and instead over to the Splatana Wiper.
Yeah, this was something that we saw Zero pick a little bit in the last couple of sets, and I thought it was a pretty strong look. I will say it is a dangerous play to make when you have this and a brush together. It puts a lot of emphasis on your other players to stabilize while the others are taking their dives, and Tiger switching over to a shooter may be reflective of that, or it could be simply a matter of, hey, if Yadu's using it and it's working, I'm gonna have to give it a try as well. But with 3 down at the start and Tiger chasing after the last, Zach, you weren't kidding. They may have carved out a niche here in the first minute of the game.
Yeah, and it's so rare for them to find it early, but it's so important. Also interesting to note that 3 out of the 8 weapons, or sub-weapons, I guess, in this game are splash walls. Super rare to see that at the higher levels here, but it looks like Alluring Airfare has found their stride in this one, using the Killer Whale and the shots of Centratide to help push them back. But importantly, getting through that checkpoint in the first minute is going to allow them so many more opportunities. We've seen teams fail constantly because they get to those last 30 seconds or overtime and haven't yet broken through. So to not have to worry about that is a huge boon for Efficient Effectiveness.
QLAR making a dive here at the Rainmaker. May have had to because they already had one member down, but they need to finish the job or at least open it up for somebody else. Nobody went down there, and actually Zero went down in the mix. Now Zero going down means that they won't have their big flank opportunity. QLAR finally does succeed alongside the help from Tiger, but that's going to mean there's only one person left back to defend, and of course it's Panda. Panda wins a huge fight there to maybe slow them down for the time being. They're certainly going to lose the lead here, but they're concerned with a whole lot more than that.
Well, I admire their patience because they send Yaru forward here and wait for Centratide to be able to jump in, knowing that they're their best Rainmaker carrier, and for a reason they're getting multiple picks. They have a little bit of an avenue, even with the Killer Whale tracking them down. They move all the way to 35 just behind that pillow, and Zero Waffles Splatana Wiper already being useful here as they take out not just the Rainmaker carrier in Centratide, but Plague as well. Looking for Yaru, they have the assistance of QLAR here. I'm not sure if they'll expend the hammer for that as well, but for now, cleaning it up in mid, and already Alluring Airfare showing why they've been so dominant in the multiple series that these two teams have played.
Yeah, every time that you have a flank or somebody diving the Rainmaker, it's usually predicated on a strong enough defense that will at least stall it out for longer. That time, QLAR was not able to hold up their end of the bargain. The defense held firm for at least a decent amount of time, but it will result in them losing the lead. Now, a lot of trouble in middle, and Jem pointed it out. Tiger going in the fight, maybe a little bit unnecessary in that spot. Now, Yaru has an opportunity to move up with Bunny, who was taken out. We did not get to see what it was a little bit further back. That could have been a bad situation that added even more points onto the board. Instead, now we're going to see a bit of a shuffle here in the middle of the map. Yaru working the drop down to make sure nothing can come through. Now, once again, coming over as Zero Waffle goes down again. Tiger goes down again. And once again, Zach, it seems like we blink and there's 3 people down. And as always, it's just Panda standing back trying to clean things up.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're not going to be able to. In fact, getting staggered there, it looked like, by yet again a combination of Plague and Yaru here. And yet again, Centratide going to be the designated Rainmaker carrier as Bunny is going to throw in those tri-strikes to be able to help out. But an early pick onto Yaru may help resolve things a little bit. as we move forward here. Actually, Yadu staying alive. It's the 52 from EE going down as they have the splash wall to hide behind. Tiger, one of the main opponents here for the Rainmaker. They'll have just enough range and the shots there to get the pick. However, Time currently not the friend of EE, who had such a great early start, but they may have peaked too early.
Yeah, a little bit too early here. Tiger really needs to get a hit here and does on Centratide. And hold on a minute. If they can clear Bunny here cleanly, Zach, you brought it up earlier. They have a checkpoint down, meaning that the points are going to fly off. They need to identify where Yadu is at, and that would be a huge pick to get early on. Keep your eyes on the top of the screen here for the players. It's Tiger and Yadu fighting it out. Yadu survives it, takes a dive, and does not go down to the Rainmaker shot. Plague there, a meeting at the Rainmaker, all going in favor of Alluring Airfare thus far. Zach, it looked dangerous, and of course, the dynamic duo on the front line closes it down with an exclamation point.
Yeah, Yadu, an absolute one-man army there. That push started with exactly what you talked about, Nine. They expend the Killer Whale to track onto Yadu, who's able to get away, get the pick onto the Rainmaker, and take multiple down. On the opposite side of things, Tiger getting a couple of picks, allowing Zero Waffle to have another shot at pushing the Rainmaker here. We'll have to see if this is their final push or if they'll get one more. Again, they don't have to go through that checkpoint, but Plague is flanking around behind. It's a 3v3 situation, and they're getting close to building up that Kraken Royale. They have enough map control. It's a 3-down situation, but they're pushing forward here. Plague maybe too far removed, and they are. Time is going to run out, and Plague doesn't have the entry tool. They don't have the Kraken Royale either. So with that and a 3-down situation, efficient effectiveness, it looks like not even needing overtime to secure this one in the final seconds and take their first game of the set.
I mean, it's stunning. The entire game was being controlled by Alluring Airfare, but in the first 30 seconds of the game and the last 15 seconds of the game, efficient effectiveness holds true and gets the picks that they need to push through. Plague took that higher angle to try to come in, was forced back and really warded off. As you noted, there was no opportunity for Plague to re-engage with that play. That's how the drop down on that map ends up working. We know that Yadu went down early on in that, but I believe Yadu took somebody else down. So great job from efficient effectiveness closing out Centratide and Bunny. But Jem, a lot that I was going to ask you about the way Alluring Airfare was played. Now I guess we have to flip it back the other way. What happened there at the end?
At the end there, this is on the back of Tiger getting a 4-for-1 trade. Right at the end, at exactly the perfect moment to get it, Tiger just quads the enemy team, going down for the last one of them. And that gave them a lot of momentum on that right-hand side to be able to get the push started. Plague comes around on the right-hand side for the flank, but half of their team is still respawning. And so EE sees, we've only got to get one player down here. Even if I just trade that player as a frontliner, we just get to run it from there. And they went for that play. Plague was out of play, and they were able to get that. So really exciting conclusion there that basically came down to some clutch solo plays there. Because it was Yaru who got this clean wipe on the enemy team to start this sequence off where they had to recollect the Rainmaker, but then Tiger fires right back with a 4-for-1 to put the team right back into it. I do want to point out that the opening was played significantly better there by EE. They had a good special push in there. The Hammer got good value, got 2 players. Tiger got another one, and that's what was able to get them started. And more of that sort of thing on the opening, I think, is going to be really beneficial for EE. More of these specials to lead into things. Because if they don't have mid control to start with and they try to use specials into there, they can be kind of obvious. They don't have the paint to work with. But if they're starting from a decently neutral position and then they use those specials while AA is engaged, that's when they're getting these openings and that's when they're creating these opportunities for themselves. So as long as EE can stay in it and keep at least some amount of map control, I think that they're in good shape and they stand a chance here. It's if they start to get locked out that they're going to have some struggles getting back in.
Well, Zach, we now will move on to Clam Blitz, and this is finally filling out our bingo sheet of modes. It's going to be another ban, this time on tower control Hagglefish. So this will be Alluring Airfare's counterpick, the first counterpick that we have seen. They're opting to take it to what is arguably the most popular Clam Blitz map in the game.
Yeah, agreed. And based on the discussion between the two teams before we got started here, I'm not surprised to see that Hagglefish is the map getting banned. There was a lot of discussion about, do we have to play this? Do we have to start on it for zones? You know, and so they're putting their fate into their own hands a little bit by taking it out of the equation, and they've earned that with the victory there. But as you mentioned, on the flip side of that, Alluring Airfare getting to go with their pick next, and Museum, always such a fun map to watch for Clam. You have that middle spinner that you're able to jump over to the enemy's overlook with, or you could just go up the ramp, but you really have to be careful here because controlling mid is just as important. I am looking again at QLAR. They'll likely again if they bring the Octobrush, that's a great entry special. Love to see players go up to the top left-hand side on that sniper perch and be able to take out some members that are spawning. However, I could also honestly see the Dark Tetris here, and I've seen it before using the not spinner, but I guess the three-armed monstrosity that is on the overlook for both teams as a cover point. And it's not just that, there are some boxes and some uninkable surface on the right-hand side in that, creating these tiny little lanes that are not only great for dodging back and forth between, but as I mentioned before, 3 out of 8 weapons were using that splash wall. Splash wall could be great at locking down those areas if they're still trying to farm up one or multiple entry specials.
I'm not sure how the Jets were able to fly through a museum, but maybe it's all open air all throughout, or technology has simply gone through. Zach questioned what QLAR was going to play, and we have our answer. It's going to stick with that Octobrush, and Zero Waffle going to be staying on that Splatana Wiper as well. So this may yet be the weapons that they go to battle with at the start. And this is what Gem has been calling out over and over. How are you opening it up? Are you letting Yadu get in? That time they will close down Yadu. Apparently a trade here, but I think you're A-okay with that, given how those first couple of games went for you. Right now, as we so often see on Clan Blitz, a nice scuffle here in the middle of the map. Do they know where Plague is? Doesn't really matter. They're going to go, and Plague will jump back out a little bit bigger and a little angrier as Zero Waffle somehow doesn't get either of those players, continues to move through, and suddenly what looked like a really great opportunity closes quickly. The pendulum swings back hard, and it gets shut down again. The respawns come just in time. Blitzbomb comes just in time, and the pendulum not all the way swinging yet, but it appears these teams are throwing haymakers in the middle of the map.
First of all, I don't know how that hammer throw didn't hit anybody. And second of all, you know, we talked about Panda in terms of what rivalry they had, and maybe it was against Plague, but I would sort of wager that on this map it's against Centratide, because you have the crab tank of Panda versus the shots from the ZNF Splatterscope of Centratide, who's now taken up residence in that middle spinner. It's going to be Panda and the rest of Efficient Effectiveness going back as Yadu gets a pick and looking for another one. They don't have the lead in clams, though. However, they do have a power clam. It was held by QLAR, who will fall, and now Alluring Airfare making use of the chaotic moments here to throw multitudes of splash balls. Yadu still looking for that entry point. It's going to be Zero Waffle take 2 with the Ultra Stamp, but they will find the pick this time. They'll get the throw, not the pick, however, and while that was going on, Alluring Airfare going to go 3 down, but will finally get the first break of the barrier.
Well, not only that, Plague is still actually there, and they have identified it quickly. Very, very nice. Zach, we have seen Plague on this particular map really be a pain for Efficient Effectiveness, not falling for the old tricks, as it were. The position identified very, very quickly. 2 minutes gone in this game. We only have the 1 score. QLAR going to take a dive here to try to move Centratide and maybe get somebody else at the same time. Going to have to settle for a retreat here, but the rest of the members actually did a pretty solid job clearing the front door. Yadu going to dive in and somehow manages to get that shot off. Did have Plague behind them to close it down a little bit, so what appeared to be a dangerous dive might not be so much. Goes ahead and gets that pesky hammer this time in the early startup. And as we move into the last half of the game, these two teams still jousting in mid. Tiger moving forward there without a lot of protection. Might have given them an opportunity. Yadu going to jump on it, seize the moment. Another pick this time. And Zero Waffle way out of the play at this point. If Centratide opts to jump, there might be more points yet to be had.
Yeah, I wanted to give them credit for holding on to a pretty solid, even though it's a deficit, just the 1 break on the barricade there for Efficient Effectiveness. But unfortunately, it looks like Alluring Airfare finding their stride. However, Efficient Effectiveness putting up a solid defense as QLAR going to get the pick and take out an important member of the front lane here for Alluring Airfare. And now trying to take control of mid yet again. They can spot Plague out due to the power clam as they throw it away. And the Zipcaster is going to come out as they see Centratide. But they're going to fall as Yadu cannot just play the offensive offensive game, but the defensive protect the president style of gameplay as well. However, it's allowed Panda to take up that residence once again on the spinner with the crab tank. They're going to expend the tri-strike, I believe, from Bunny to try and get that out of the equation, but they fall to Bunny going down yet again to that now seemingly more important than ever Ultra Stamp from Zero Waffle, who helps to get the pick onto plate. That's another major threat down, and with 18 to 17 clams at their disposal, this may finally be the opportunity for EE.
It's just Bunny now. Yaru down. That's another barrier break, and a second power clam will find the target this time. Zero Waffle gonna try to be a distraction there. I will say the only point here that you have to give Alluring Airfare credit for is during that whole scuffle, they were able to build up another power clam. They tossed it back so that Centratide can grab it, and they are immediately moving forward. Tiger desperately needs to win this fight or get some assistance, and both of those will happen. Now Centratide moves back to protect what might be their last resource in the clam sitting below their basket. They're gonna grab it early. Wait, did they have a jump setup? Where? Who? It's gonna miss either way, but somebody got behind him. Yaru's gonna score this one. It won't be enough. They'll need a couple more on top of that. You can see there just 3 more would have given them the lead. Now 2 more, but I don't think anybody else is around. Zach, this could be very, very dangerous. That was their ticket to overtime. It looks like Bunny is very close to building another, and they sense the moment. The Ultra Stamp once again will go off into the drink, but may have done the damage. Yaru is able to save it, but it will be only Yaru for the time being, and they have a long way to go to score this clam.
Yeah, Zero Waffle with the literal kamikaze against Alluring Airfare. They're taking down 2, but losing their own life as a result. And now Yaru has just about halfway through the overtime to try and push this one forward. They're being escorted by Bunny here. They have no specials currently at the ready. They're going to try and help with Centratide trying to get a pick, but they're going to lose Yaru. They're going to use Plague. It's just Bunny who needs to win a 2v1, and they can't against a crab tank with 1 on their flank as well. And it was a close call yet again, but taken to overtime. Efficient, effectiveness proves that they're here to stay, gets the tie in the set. And I have to say, Nine, that whole sequence, even before when we questioned where that jump in and how that jump in even happened, some of the most crazy and seemingly meaningless team fights that take place in those side alleyways tend to be so important. And it's Bunny helping to win essentially a 1v2, finally getting support at the end of it with Zero Waffle, who was such a pivotal player in this game 4, helps efficient effectiveness to tie this setup at 2.
Oh, another great game between these two. And yeah, Jem, there's so much to talk about in terms of, was it a misplay to dive in with the power clam sitting under their basket? Were they, if they take the lead there, is it okay? Is it always okay if you get the W? So much to break down, and I'm curious what you saw.
Man, there is so much to talk about in that game. That was definitely the most tactical game that we've seen so far. So many fights, so many close finishes to those fights. That jump play, definitely risky, and it was an opportunity that got them some points, and they were only 2 clams away from equalizing that lead. They just didn't have those 2 clams. So it was, you know, if that goes the other way, then this is a very different story at the end of the game there, with EE trying to scramble to get their lead and try to regain it. But I have to give a lot of credit there to Zero's Ultra Stamps. Those Ultra Stamps were getting a lot of value on this particular game. They were using it in those narrow corridors that are created on the enemy plat or in the enemy pit, and getting a lot of value that was really difficult to fight against at such close range. So good job to them to be able to create those openings. Tiger moving around with the team and using that 52 gal to be able to get the picks they need, but also playing around the team a lot more. It felt like EE was more focused on one particular fight at a time than they were on, say, the Sturgeon game, where they were getting isolated more. So lots of good things we're seeing from EE there, and while, you know, none of these pushes really end up actually scoring an awful lot, EE was the one that was able to pull off the power clam plus another power clam that got them the lead they needed, and ultimately that was all the lead that they ended up needing.
Well, a tactical game it was, and it is so good to see after the most dominant game, I would say, between these two teams, where Alluring Airfare got a victory. Yes, efficient effectiveness took it back in overtime, or I guess right before overtime in the Rainmaker game, but this was something they couldn't capitalize on last time. There were candid opportunities by Alluring Airfare to take games. They didn't seem up to the task. Now we're going to see Alluring Airfare take it back to Splat Zones. It was a Splat Zones map that was banned, so I guess Efficient Effectiveness wisened up to where Alluring Airfare was trying to go. It's going to be Flounder Heights this time, and this should be a really interesting choice here, Zach, because this is a map where team comps tend to shift up a mighty fine amount, and these have been two pretty static teams.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they end up banning the other museum map here, Zones, for the ban pick here. But unfortunately, you know, like you said, this does cause a lot of changes to typically happen. You know, we often see your Carbon Roller Decos, your Tri-Slosher Nouveaux, sometimes even the base level Tri-Sloshers. And for efficient effectiveness, that actually works out, I think, relatively well for them because they have Tiger on their team, who, as we saw, is a very strong Tri-Slosher player. So whether they stick with the sloshing machine, go back to the vanilla Tri, or even pick a weapon that we hadn't seen yet from them, which is that Tri-Nouveau that we know to be so tried and true on Flounder Heights, it is going to be a great map for them, even though I don't believe it was their pick. And on the opposite side of things, you know, we saw Zero Waffle make so many great plays with the Splatana Stamper. I do wonder if they will stick with that or if they'll go back to the T-Tech, because Tri-Strike is so good on this map with how small the zones are, and with it being a 2-zone map, you know, Bunny is more than likely going to be doing the same thing with that T-Tech. So lots of questions, although with Alluring Airfare having at least a couple of seemingly one tricks, let's see what the changes actually are, if any. And speaking of one of those players, Centratide, going with a weapon we actually have seen a fair bit of in this tournament in the Explosher.
Yeah, I'll also note here, Tiger not switching over to that Tri-Slosher. To me, that says, hey, I went with this main weapon and then we won 2 games here. There's no reason to change it, even if something is conventionally stronger. And this is going to be interesting from Centratide. They already have some Tri-Strikes, so they may have deemed that it's not as necessary. We, of course, know how strong the paint is with this main weapon, so an interesting choice to bring together. QLar and Plague dancing around there in the pit area and then running away. Tiger's now going to crash in, going after Bunny. Bunny does an admirable job of holding it down and may have done so just long enough for the reinforcements to come in and get the punishment. A very valiant hold, even going down at the end of it, only a couple points off, as we see these teams have a pretty tried and true game plan here. Send your roller variants down on the bottom to pick anybody who falls down. Send your shooters forward there, and we'll figure out the rest of it as it goes along.
Yeah, understandably, Panda not one to try and take those heads-on team fights, and they're going to lose it to Yato as a result, but they get revenged by Tiger, who is, as you mentioned, sticking with that 52, a solid choice to be able to spot out members like Yato. You noted how important that is, and they're going to get the double as a result, helping to clean up the first kill before that. Call it a delayed triple, as Yato going to be the last one sticking around, being pressured by Zero Waffle, who did indeed swap over to that Tenatech. That's going to be the lead for efficient effectiveness. Panda doing a great job of holding down the high ground here with this Crab, and now comes the point where you wonder, how does Alluring Effectiveness get back in? They expend the multiple specials here. We see the Tri-Strike, we see the Killer Whale 5.1 coming out. I'm sure Plague is getting closer and closer to that Kraken Royale, which can climb up those walls, and they're already getting picks. That's one down on the QLR. They're already going to have the Kraken Royale. Do they find anyone? No, but it seems like just the mere presence of such an offensive special is going to flip those zones back for AA.
Yeah, efficient effectiveness did not move up very quickly after they had those zones. Typically, you'll have somebody who is watching over this wall area, as you saw Plague immediately move to do for Alluring Airfare. And because of that, Alluring Airfare was able to get back in without any major struggle in doing so. That's not typically something that we see on this map. You can see how Alluring Airfare has opted to play it differently. A trade on the zone will go the way of Alluring Airfare here. Plague swinging at QLar. They'll both go down, but they're perfectly okay with that, given that they now have the lead and have decent control. Good enough for them thus far. Tiger moves up and is able to take one out, but Plague will get the jump back in. Go ahead and get the punch onto Panda, and if they don't get some major value out of these specials, they're going to have a hard time. I know they were able to flip the zone right back there, but that was 2 specials to do it here. They're in desperation mode right now.
Yeah, EE really hoping that this is not reminiscent of games 1 and 2, where they had one very solid team fight and the rest of the game was all in Alluring Airfare's favor. QR sitting on the Zipcaster is going to affect to pop it now, but they are marked, so it's going to be relatively easier to spot them out, and as a result, less of a distraction and more of an easy target as Plague is ready for them. That's going to be almost all of the penalty points against Alluring Airfare ticked down. They're going to lose Yadu, however, and Plague, as Panda getting some help from Tiger, who traded out in order for them to build up that crab tank that's going to take control of the zone away at 23. QLR now back in the fight, but being forced back by those Tri-Strike. It's going to be the 1-for-1 special-wise, as EE is going to have their own here, but they will lose all of their members. Plague at the forefront of that, going down themselves, but helping to force a wipeout as we get into the single digits, Nine.
Clear your beacons, folks. If you need any other reason, that should do it. That fight won Alluring Airfare the game in dominant fashion as they win on a counter pick and take the lead back here, the rubber match, if you will, to take it up to 3-2 in this best of 9. And you can see the difference in the way that these teams played the map. One team took control, sent one player down to maybe try to flank and come back up, got spotted out there. It all came out with a big nothing burger. On the other side, they set beacons up, they being Alluring Airfare. They move Plague up to hit the walls. They have the right specials on the defensive side, and they are rewarded for the team play, the strategy, and the set play. Jem, I know you had to be smiling at the end of that one with the plays that Plague was making, but it really started even earlier than that.
Yeah, it felt like EE was having a lot more trouble getting coordinated, and it might have to do with the map geometry there. Being such a split-up map, being a place where it takes longer to get people into position, where there's a lot of cover, there's a lot of stuff that can get in your way, it might just be that when a fight broke out, they couldn't get more help over to it. Because it felt like we were seeing a lot of solo plays coming in from Tiger where there weren't that many people in there to back it up. Some of their stronger plays came when maybe Panda spotted they were going in and were able to maybe get a crab online to be able to shoot back at that player. But in general, a lot of their plays were just getting broken up very early on, and they had very little threat on the backside enemy zone for most of the game. There were a couple of times they were able to maybe get a sneaky flip with a Tri-Strike across the map, but as soon as your opponents know that you're going to do that, you just drop one player back, paint through it, and it's not a big problem. So they really weren't able to capitalize on the way that the map is spread out, on maybe getting multiple flank angles going at once. They kind of ended up getting funneled down their own ramp instead of finding multiple ways in. And I think that really hurt them with their ability to push back in against this more control-oriented comp that they're seeing from AA.
Yeah, a great battle here, and at this point, if you are efficient effectiveness, I think you have to, again, kind of start looking at moments where you can separate the members of Alluring Airfare to get the big fight going that you're looking for. Of course, you can see here on the map what the bans have become, and it does appear that another Clan Blitz map has been banned. It does look as though NineWholeGrains is going to be banned on the Clan Blitz. I am not unhappy with that. I don't tend to enjoy Clan Blitz on that map. It does offer a longer, more measured style of pushing. That's not typically how I take my Clan Blitz matches, but I can understand why a team might like it, especially for efficient effectiveness, and I think that's probably why Alluring Airfare hit the ban.
Yeah, there's no shortage of maps that just feel so lengthy, and with Manta Maria being so linear the way it is, it feels so difficult to have to come all the way back from spawn. We talked about in the last broadcast how important jumps in are, whether you're using that stealth jump, that drop roller, or nothing at all, for that purpose anyway. And they're not going to have to worry about that if they end up going to Manta Maria zones later. It is a 2-zone map, and of course, a lot of those fights will be taking place in mid. However, we do want to talk about what's up next. And we already saw the Rainmaker on this map. Now we're going to go over to the only other mode where it's available, with it being Clan Blitz on Scorch Gorge. Very similar, I think, play styles. When you're looking at this versus Rainmaker on this map, they're both the sort of hectic style. You're just going to have to allocate one team member who would otherwise maybe be carrying the power clam to go and find those extra clams to put in. Usually that's going to be your maybe more supportive style player, the one that prefers to stay back, your Pandas of the world, and maybe your Bunnies on the side of Alluring Airfare. And it's going to be so important for the two main skirmishers and slayers on the team, that being Yadu and Plague for Alluring Airfare. And I think for efficient effectiveness, that mainly being Zero Waffle and Tiger. With QLR, actually, they kind of have three in a way. Zero Waffle is more of that flank style and kind of Rambo with the Ultra Stamp, but they're going to need to replicate the same formula of getting the pressure on early, getting the first pop of the barrier if at all possible, and making sure that they can hold on to mid, because that's been something that, with the exception maybe of that museum game that we saw, has been a real struggle for them.
Yeah, it's simple transitive mathematics, folks. You take the map that you won on, and you take the mode that you won on, you smash them together, and that's your counter pick. Makes perfect sense. Taking a look here, it looks like Centratide back on the tried and true, and of course, we've speculated, but Zero is going to be sticking with that. Tiger going to be sticking with the 52 gal as well. It's a slight shift from how we started the set, but once again, we have settled into our consistent comps.
Yeah, and I suppose we don't need to question QR at this point either. They're now, I think, basically the entire way through going with that Octobrush. Haven't seen the Dark Tetris from them yet. Centratide has tons of room to maneuver around. They have a little box to protect their body as well, and they can get to mid if they want to. However, QR trying to shark for that exact purpose. Instead, meeting with Plague here, they're going to do the Dance of Death as no one's going to go down as a result. However, the specials will start to fly. Plague using the cover of that Tri-Strike to get away from QR, and the Vertical Flick will just miss as QR picks up the Power Clam, whether by accident or on purpose, and as a result they'll have to back off. So a pretty standard neutral game here, nobody getting really much of an advantage until this point, where it's just going to be Zero Waffle left trying desperately to survive with that Ultra Stamp in tow, and with a full wipeout, I think it's safe to say Alluring Airfare going to get that first pop as they send Plague forward.
Yep, diving forward, and Yadu up there as well. Kular doing the exact right play, which is simply dive at the only member that isn't protected by a splash wall or an invincible special. And honestly, if they get out of this with only 71 points, that's pretty good, I would say, given that that started with a wipeout. It took a little bit of time for them to shuffle the clams around, but I say all the right moves made on the defensive side. That power claim is actually going to give away the position of one of their players there, and now Plague is going to jump down and needs to find value off of this. Was able to get one, and it's a good thing too, because everybody else on the team is down. They've certainly called it out. Now Plague goes down, and this is the question. Shuffling these clams around, will they be able to do it quick enough? It looks like Kular got shot by Centratide. And Zach, we say it so often here, it's one thing to win the fights, but if you don't have the correct clam count with the right people, all of that, 0 points, really not even a ton of map control to show for it.
Well, and speaking of these fights here, I think the catalyst for both of the big ones, as we see a nice snipe on the Zero Waffle, has been picking up that power clam when you're not needing to, or maybe just at an inopportune time. We saw it in the first fight that caused Zero Waffle to be the last one standing, and now Efficient Effectiveness having a decent shot at it, but Centratide back up in an ideal spot. It looked like they got a snipe. Panda having to back off with the Crab Tank. They do survive as a result, though, but Tiger going to need to come back and be that offensive tip of the spear. They're going to help with Panda get a flank onto Yadu for that pick. Play going to go down to Kular. It's effectively a 2v2 situation here, or 3v2 rather, as we see Kular popping the Zipcaster, just barely able to avoid the Tri-Strike. They're going to get a couple of parting shots on a Bunny, but Bunny with that distancing on the Tenatech, Splash and T-Tech players do it so well. We're back to a 3v3 state, and again, it's this neutral ground that Alluring Airfare seems to do so well in, that even when they're pressured back into their spawner next to their basket, they don't seem to give up much ground.
Well, they gave up just enough ground here, and now keep an eye on the top. Folks, still 0 clams from Efficient Effectiveness. One of them did go back and pick up that pity clam, and this is going to really hurt them here. Now in the longer parts, if you grab it, you better be ready to score with that thing and take the lead with that thing, because now Zero Waffle totally marked out here. That's not what you want your wiper to be. Who are they going to throw it to? How are they going to shuffle this around? They still will need to score that if they want to take the lead. I guess the one thing that you can rest your laurels on is that one power clam will be enough to take the lead, as Kular fights it out in the middle. Now Tiger is back. They have the resources to make a move here. It looks like Tiger is going to be sharking around, fighting Plague, takes out Plague, and Bunny will survive it out against Zero as well. A nice jump over to the other side, so they've done a really good job of mixing up where this power claim is going to go, and the other members are coming up with big plays.
That's another stamp throw where the intended target seems to survive directly in the middle, surrounded by a ring of enemy ink. It just fascinates me here. Rough luck for Zero Waffle, who's not able to get the pick. However, they are finding that it's going to be the lead lost here, as they're able to take it by just 3, forcing a 3 down, and Centratide being the last one alive, who spotted out with this power clam, pushing it forward and effectively unable to fight. As a result, extending that lead up to 44 is EE, and now, and only now, is Plague able to come back and try and play defense. But Panda, in the meantime, as we predicted beforehand, going to be the player to pick up those remaining clams, but just a little bit too late. I think maybe missing that Squid Surge there, the kiss of death, as it were, from them being able to extend that push. And for now, Panda bravely holding onto this power clam in the face of Centratide's charger, but an excellent push by EE, who shows that it's not just one push that they can do in order to get a lead in these last 30 seconds.
Well, and stunning decisions and correct plays made all around the map here, as you see Plague taking a dive forward here to try try to open things up for the rest of the team. This jump's going to come in, but it is not going to be a safe jump by any means. They will score off of this, but with just 14 seconds, they're going to need a major play and some more scores. They would need a power claim and then some, and it doesn't appear that anybody is going to be remotely close to it as well. They will still have the pity claim, but they are not going to have a lot of time after that. Overtime is there. Nobody is around except for Plague. That's going to be Yadu getting the shot here as half of overtime is already gone. Buddy moves forward. Qlar takes a play at the back. Does get taken out here. Tiger moves forward. They're going to need a little bit more than just that. Another one went down. Yadu's going to fight. It's a wipeout, and it's just Panda, and does a little dance here as we move to 3-3 in this set. And Zach, efficient effectiveness, looked like they were in control that game. That's more of the EE we've been seeing.
There are multiple pundits in the community who could write chapter books on the opportune and inopportune times to pick up the power clams and the pity clams and what that does for your team. Who do you send to pick it up? When do you send them to pick it up? Do you just throw it back if you're going to get into a team fight? Do you try and throw it forward and relay it, almost like a relay race? And so much of that is right at the heat of the moment, so you can't be thinking optimally 100% of the time. It's so difficult, and as a result of that, and some questionable throws as well, efficient effectiveness, able to come back and end up with the winning push in the final minute there, doing a fantastic job. They've now won both games here on Scorch Gorge. That's 2 out of their 3 wins, with their third also being on Clam Blitz. Unfortunately for them, the other 2 Clam Blitz maps are already banned, so they cannot return there. Their only saving grace is that they're currently 1-0 on Rainmaker. So with the ability of the winning team here to ban a map mode, maybe you do go for either that final zones map in Manta Maria, or for something else like Tower Control. I see now that all of Tower Control has been banned. Nine, I'll throw it to you to get some analysis from Jem.
Yeah, well, you know, Jem, it's kind of funny here that AA has won everything on the top, EE has won everything on the bottom, but in that last game, the moment when Zero had that power clam and were moving around, it seemed as though EE was holding on to that entire map. You talked a little bit that they had the tools and the players to do just that. What did you see on that map, and have they turned a corner?
It started off pretty rough for both teams because both teams were getting held up by exactly the same problem. There was someone on the platform that the goal is at, and nobody was actually able to deal with it. There are some specials on both comps that are designed, you know, in this kind of a comp to help deal with that. For example, Panda had a crab that they actually popped in exactly the location to be able to hold somebody from defending from that goal platform, but it got popped early and there was nobody to defend it. So the first couple pushes end up accomplishing basically nothing. But EE was able to win a fight in mid strongly enough that they just got players far enough into the AA base that they were able to get a little bit more in. And the response from AA was not super strong with an attempt to make a Kraken power clam jump play. In the meantime, while the jump is going out, EE takes a player out in mid. So now it's already a numbers disadvantage, but then they had people back in time, maybe not to stop the power clam from going in, but to splat both the Kraken as it transforms and the jumper as they land. Now, AA has no resources to score with, they have no players to score with. I think that's a really great illustration of why those kinds of power clam jump plays really start to fall off towards the higher levels of competitive play.
Well, you can see it right there, Zach. We are headed back to Splat Zones, and we are headed to Manta Maria. You know, it's interesting to note here, suddenly now all of these wins mean a lot, because whether you're picking or you're banning, every piece of that 50-50 now has a major influence on what your opponent is able to pick. I know it's all Rainmaker here, but believe me when I say that these are 3 very different Rainmaker maps. But first things first, we've got to get through Splat Zones here, where Alluring Airfare has looked quite comfortable.
Yeah, Nine, you want to talk about 50-50. Split your screen directly in the middle horizontally. Alluring Airfare has won everything on the top. EE won everything on the bottom, and Alluring Airfare only has one choice left if they want to keep that streak going, which is Splat Zone's Manta Maria. We discussed it a little bit earlier. It's a 2-zone map. It's very difficult to get back. It's a long journey from your spawn, so you're going to want to make sure that you're saving one person, let them get out. A lot of times that was Zero Waffle or Panda or Bunny, who might have been the last person alive, and you want to make sure that those individuals that are not always the skirmishers are able to save their specials, and more importantly, allow their teammates to jump to them and to save safe space as we see yet again Centratide swapping back over to the Explosher. I think that pick is really smart on this map. You have that grading over the entire middle section where you can have an effect on both zones. You have the Ink Storm that can provide that passive inking on one or maybe both of the zones if you throw it in the right spot, and it dissuades the enemy from getting too close and personal by sitting in one of the zones that they favor.
In the previous games, we've seen Alluring Airfare take these games because they know how to attack and where to move up after they take the zone. That's the big question. On the other hand, Efficient Effectiveness has been in control of these games when they can create long scramble situations and trust that their team comp is a little bit better suited for the fighting. QLR going to go all the way around here, trying to look for someone. Better find a few people because it's just going to be QLR now. Does just enough. Everyone's going to rotate back, but the damage has certainly been done at this point. Yaru will collect on that side, but that will mean that the members will not be able to move up into the stronger defensive positions. Yaru has gotten up here onto Overlook. As we look over on the left side, Panda almost certainly going to try to fire the crab tank from this side. Barely is able to, but what is the follow-up going to be at this point? Plague has worked behind them, then gets one player here. That's a huge player because that's Tiger down. Both of the 52s are down, and QLR once again is crashing through with major plays. That may be a game-saving play because of how long it can take to get back to this zone, and this brush sack finally making its presence felt.
Yeah, first of all, Panda has clearly done their homework in terms of studying the maps because they're always able to find the opportune high ground to pop their crab, be out of the action, but still have an effect on the zones. And QLR, you see them popping the Zipcaster again here. They're going to end up trading with Yadu. Again, that highest ELO player, so I have to think that's a trade well worth it. It does allow Alluring Airfare to get back in with a combination of other specials like the Tri-Strike and, of course, the Kraken Royale from Plague, but they're going to go down as Tiger able to get behind them. Now going to be doing here with Bunny. They're able to throw out the splash wall, but Bunny able to get away, dash away, as it were. And Efficient Effectiveness holding on to the lead, at least for the time being. The 252s will duel, and Yaru will win that one, but they're going to be taken out by the Janitor, as it were. And 9, this one started out pretty strongly in Alluring Airfare's favor. Efficient Effectiveness, though, showing that they're not going anywhere for the time being.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's map, whether it's mode, whether it's confidence, or some combination of all of them, but that right there where two members are gunning down Yadu. Yes, Yadu is going to tend to win one or two of those fights, but it's going to need a lot more. And you see there, when somebody does go after Yadu being Tiger and there's nobody else there to defend, the members of Alluring Airfare were not able to rotate back to clean things up. That's the difference in coordination between these two teams right now. And they've been able to do such a fantastic job of separating the members of Alluring Airfare, whether by choice or whether force, as Yadu will once again get a nice shot off to take somebody out. But they're going to need a lot more than simply that.
Well, when you're attempting to break a curse, you have to think outside the box, and that's exactly what they're attempting to do there. You saw just how far away from the rest of their teammates Tiger was, and it's going to result in them going down as they don't have a lot of backup. However, Panda, yet again, going to have the special with the ready. QLR going to get a pick as a result of that Zipcaster and the nice shots. They're also going to find play from the bottom of the map. It looked like they were just kind of aiming forward here, and they somehow find the splat. Yadu going to be one of the last ones alive, and they're able to get a couple important picks. Those are two huge offensive threats. In the meantime, they build up that killer whale that's going to attack Zero Waffle, and that's going to result in a delayed triple as well. So Yaru, yet again, brute forcing their way into trying to take these zones back for their team. Finally, with some support, they're going to do so, if only for a moment. But Yaru can only do so much as the rest of their team having to come back the hard way.
Yeah, I had so many remarks prepared on how Efficient Effectiveness is doing a much better job coordinating their attacks and their specials. That's still true, but if you want to see what 2800 X rank looks like, that's what it can look like. Tearing this game back in arm's distance here for Alluring Airfare. On the other side, Efficient Effectiveness does go 2 down there, so their 2 frontmost players went down looking for trades. We've talked ad nauseum about how trades deep in the opponent's territory are okay to get on this map. Now, Bunny moves forward and gets a huge pick there. That was the opportunity to strike. Another member will go down with that deep trade. Yadu is already pushed up here, and now Bunny watching over the top. Centratide is here as well. They have finally got in the defensive position, and if they can identify where the threat is coming from at the top of the screen, they might have an opportunity to swing this one back in their favor as we enter the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, speaking of swinging, Plague able to get one, but not able to get the second one on the Tiger. Tiger going to be playing around the Yato, and we're going to have Centra Tide, who is on those grates. They're getting taken out. Q are going to end their Zipcaster and going to help to get the assist. That's going to force a 3-down situation, and yet again, it's going to be a wipeout this time, as Bunny not able to stay alive. Usually they're that sort of overlooking presence that loves to be there and loves to just be out of the range to build up that tri-strike, but now Alluring Airfare, we see a couple members coming back from the left side of your screen. It's going to be Centra Tide and Bunny. Yato going to be painting the zone, and with Plague over top, that's going to help paint one of them. We've entered overtime now in earnest, and the Ink Storm is going to help out. The last of their specials will come out, and it will be just enough to hold on to their lead of 4 points, not including those penalty points. So despite the scare here, Alluring Airfare going to maintain their perfect streak on splat zones, but Nine, the further along we get with this showdown format, the less ideal, I think, the map and mode combinations become as these teams try and pick their favorites and ban their least favorites earlier on.
Well, I mean, you talk about efficient effectiveness, being able to identify targets and move through there. I would say that the way they were winning that game is far more replicable than what Alluring Airfare had to do. Of course, we talked about Yatu's incredible individual play early on in that game, or I guess maybe towards the back half of it, rather, to get 3 down in a situation where most players wouldn't get anybody, gave the team a fighting chance. And there at the very end, Plague running on top of that grading, nobody there, and just rolling over the zone, putting enough paint on that to end the game prematurely as the other 3 members try to neutralize their own zone. Nobody caught on to it quick enough, but woo, Jem, we talk so much about Alluring Airfare giving efficient effectiveness opportunities. That time, efficient effectiveness, I feel like, left the door open in that game.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of moments there where they were not quite respecting the roller. There were a couple of picks that Plague was able to just get cleanly over walls of bunker. You got to be super careful knowing that there is going to be a sharking roller somewhere around, that you don't fall prey to something like that. Yaru, of course, out here using the map geometry really well. There are definitely some dead ends in this map that the 52 gal is able to take great advantage of, because there are fewer opportunities to approach it, fewer different angles that you can take on it. And so when you wall off one of those angles, it makes it very easy for the 52 to be just its own fortress out there. And Yaru took full advantage of that to be able to get the team back in. So definitely credit to those individual plays there. There were also some really good moments there from EE. That was an extremely close match that definitely could have gone the other way. Cool was getting a ton of value off of the Octobrush on those top grates up there, being able to run around on the grates so they can move faster than anybody else can up there, and also being able to rain down from there using the Octobrush's ability to hit down over the top of things. Both of those proving really valuable there. The verticality of the map really helping with Zipcaster plays. So we got a really strong outsized impact there from the Octobrush in particular as well. And the Crab also from Panda doing great work at stalling pushes that looked like they might end long enough for EE to jump players back in. That was one of the ways that they got their strong push all the way down to 44. It took some of those Crab tanks to hold AA off at times they would have normally been able to regain control, and allow them to hold the zone long enough to make it a really, really close and exciting match to watch there.
Well, speaking of close and exciting, we said that the winner of that game had a lot of power for the rest of this, because we knew 2 of these final 3 maps had to be played, and you got to pick the singular one that you did not want to play. It appears that that was Eeltail Alley. Alluring Airfare has gotten that out. They know that it's going to be 2 Rainmakers, and they've decided that they'll try their chances on Undertow Spillway and Sturgeon Shipyard. Zach, these are 2 fantastically fun Rainmaker maps between 2 fantastically fun teams. See all that alliteration?
Yeah, and I love it. Hindsight is 2020, so I may feel a little biased here saying this, but I think Eeltail Alley is probably the easiest to eliminate here for either team. It's generally the least played in high-level tournaments. It's probably what you're not practicing in scrimmages, and what we're playing next, Undertow Spillway Rainmaker, is played a fair bit, probably more even than Sturgeon Rainmaker, which is why we're seeing it now here. There's tons of different ways you can approach this map. Some teams like to go right just to get that checkpoint out of the way. A lot of teams will end up pushing left regardless, so if they get that checkpoint there or not, they're going to want to go either either across that unequal bridge or across the horseshoe shape that you see over there, that grating. And as far as the team compositions go, Centratide, of course, going to be going back over to the ZNF Charger. That's going to allow them that overlook to get some important picks. And on the opposite side of things, we've seen Tiger pretty much all day sticking to this 52 to counter Yadu, and they will win that first engagement, going down to Plague as a counter result. But Zero Waffle, with the exceptional range, they're able to take things down, and as a result, Panda and the rest of EE going to be pushing first.
Yeah, look at this. There's just going to be a couple perfectly placed. Holy cow. We don't even see... Okay, maybe it was Centratide. I was about to say, we don't even see Bunny on our screen if that's where those were tossed. But Centratide put those two at the exact spot they had to be put and will now grab it as well. Maybe a little bit early. Will be taken down by Tiger, so this will slow them down. And the threat is not yet gone. But, Zach, we so often see... on this map, if you lose that first checkpoint in the first minute, you very often do not win the game when the screen shows who has won. So now we have stabilized a little bit more. The first minute of the game is gone. All members up in the middle of the map as Bunny goes down, Qlar goes down, and another goes down. So Plague and Yadu opted to play well ahead of where the objective was going to be. They're going to have to be careful here not to get pincered by the other members of VE that are coming out of spawn.
Look, you can just be so cheeky with that left-hand side. You see that little nook right next to where the ramp is. You could just hide there and Shark if the Rainmaker is about to disappear or go back to mid. You can just pick it up and try and push it a little bit further, especially if you're able to get that checkpoint. We now see Alluring Airfare holding on to the Rainmaker. It's once again their backliner Centratide. Yadu going to get the pick there onto Panda. Zero Waffle going to try and yet again use that range of Centratide struggling a little bit to get on top of the checkpoint. They just don't have the ink. Finally, they're going to get the support from Bunny here. That could have been a dangerous situation. Centratide now using the shots of that Charger to make sure they can pick it back up, but Panda in that time has the Crab at the ready. They're going to be supported here by the Tri-Strike as well as the Splash Wall, and as a result of that, they're going to use the Surge to get across at least halfway through the bridge. Zero Waffle finally going to be stopping things with the Ultra Stamp, but that entire way through, 25, a super dangerous number. It's even more dangerous if you can actually make it all the way across that bridge, as we see Plague taking down another big threat there in Qlar, but that's already a strong start here in the first half of this game for AA.
Well, and a fantastic push that everybody contributed to as well. Plague was watching the drop down toward people over. Yaru was leading the charge and immediately throwing the triple ink strike at the Crab was Bunny, so everybody got in on that, and of course Centratide the carrier as well. 225. This team really hitting their stride at the right time. Bunny will go down here as Plague works around the middle and tries to close it down. The 52 has been traded off, so where is this Rainmaker going to go, and did they rotate over quick enough? Centratide has the opportunity and misses the shot, but gets the second shot. We were not sure. It appears that the other members may have done a good job of closing the door anyway, but for just a moment, it looked like Centratide was all that stood between Alluring Airfare and that checkpoint. Instead, now Tiger is going to run forward. Centratide's going to need to find more than just one shot. Gonna rotate over here. Where is the pop? There it is. Did they get it quick enough to slow it down? It's the second triple ink strike, and it will break it before the checkpoint is broken and take a couple members out. Zero going to again pop it. Centratide has a chance to shut this push down as well. Everybody jumping in. This is going to be a horrid landing. A couple going down, a full-on wipeout, a successful defense, and once again, Centratide's triple ink strikes breaking it all down.
Well, in 9, this series of events only happens because of a principle we talked about where Centratide is able to get out with their special. This time, it's not so much about jumping back into them, but having that for the push that they know is coming. As a result, Efficient Effectiveness, who's been kind of brute forcing and trying to make those pushes happen instead of playing a little more patient like AAR, is not able to get that pop onto the checkpoint, which is so important entering the final minute here. We talk about when you're making a push in the last 30 seconds or in overtime, if you're having to get that checkpoint, that allows for another team fight defense from the winning team here. Nice throw on the hammer there to get the pick on the Bunny as the Rainmaker is going to push forward. It's actually Tiger this time who holds onto it, and it looks like Yadu or Centratide might have gotten the pick on that one. Qlar going to go down definitely as a result of Yadu, and now Panda, who was shooting the Rainmaker shield, having to back off here in the final 40 seconds. Is yet again 9. We see EE jumping in. This time it was Qlar who thankfully had the drop roller, but as Yadu resets the Rainmaker, they're going to have to be super careful with when and how they drop in the final 30.
Yeah, I mean, if you drop the Rainmaker off in that time, you are truly playing for the final 30 here and trusting that you have enough resources because you gave up a lot of room, and Tiger was happy to take that room. That is Yadu down. A special coming in here. Centratide may need to hit another shot. He's not even going to get the chance here. Tiger gets the shot off here. These are the triple ink strikes being thrown to try to neutralize the Rainmaker. We're certainly going to see a pop. Keep an eye, folks, on where they get on that uninkable as we enter the final few seconds here. Maybe even overtime. We will enter overtime. That was all the specials from EE being thrown. The Kraken dives forward, chasing and gets it, or perhaps it was Centrotide. We don't know for certain, but what we do know for certain is that Alluring Airfare are your FABL Legends, the Legends of FABL, in a 5-3 victory, a fantastic best of 9. And Zach, we said just about every single player's name in that last game. Yes, we can talk all we want about Yaru and Plague, everything, all the plays, but everybody contributed for that final victory. What a fantastic final game to a fantastic set.
So close to the game 9 of 9 dream there, but for Alluring Airfare, I think they deserve that victory. It's not just on that map, but with their play throughout the entirety of the set. They get their first win of the set on Rainmaker to close it out. A couple of hard moments there for efficient effectiveness sometimes, where they try and just rush forward and get the checkpoint that get thwarted, mostly by those triple ink strikes. At the very end there, Zero Waffle being unable to climb that wall and go around that horseshoe allows time for the Kraken Royale to be built up there by Plague, who gets either the final pick or gets darn close to it, with Centrotide also being around the area. So as you mentioned there, each player playing such an important role in the game. One player who I know his name we've said a little bit less of today is Tiger, but they certainly had some important picks and gave Yaru all that they could handle on that 52. And boy, this is a team that truly deserved to have the highest elo of the tournament, and they proved that they deserve it with the win over an efficient effectiveness team who is very much a dark horse going into it, played exceptionally well, really had some great moments as a team there, and swung some games that really, again, looked to be in Alluring Airfare's favor. They sweep through Clan Blitz, they go 1-1 on Rainmaker, but they just can't get it done on the other two modes despite their bans. Fantastic job by Alluring Airfare, who gets the Grand Finals win.
And Jem, I can finally catch my breath here, just enough to pass it over to you. What an incredible final game, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts not only on that last game where all the members of Alluring Airfare truly contributed at the key moments, but also this set as a whole.
Definitely. Huge props to efficient effectiveness, because the previous matches that they played against Alluring Airfare were not this close. They definitely came in prepared today. They had some really good game plans, and they took some really good fights too. A lot of the neutral engagements on Rainmaker Undertow there went straight to efficient effectiveness right away. They'd get the Rainmaker pop, and then instantly using that paint from the Rainmaker pop, Tiger was already on top of somebody, already getting that pick. And even if they went down, they'd get traded back by somebody else on their team. Just again, that great coordinated pushing play that we have seen. But Alluring Airfare also knew that with their backline weapon and with the strikes that they were all too ready to build on both Bunny and on Centrotide, that they were going to have a bit of a fortress that EE was going to have to push in against. And that terrain breaking up the fight made it so difficult for EE to be able to use those skills and actually get in. When it took so long for them to be able to get to the first checkpoint, they only had so many opportunities, and AA played to that win condition exceptionally well. And I think that that's really kind of the story of it, that they're playing to their win condition here. They knew that EE was going to be able to rush in and make these good coordinated plays, but they were able to use their stellar, ace in Yaru to be able to get that outsized impact on the map. They were able to use the fact that they had a backliner who wasn't going to be contested very often to be able to get picks in positions where it's really easy to get those frontliners and to make it just a little bit easier on the rush. They were able to shark those frontliners, and they had Bunny playing exceptionally safe, playing around those specials and making sure they had them and had the paint out at those key moments when the team needed them to win fights. It really was, like you said, a full team effort here from Alluring Airfare. Congratulations to them on their well-earned win on the FABL Finals.
Yeah, an absolute gauntlet that they had to go through. Again, folks, 6 qualifying events just to get to yesterday's double elimination bracket, which was not easy to fight through all of that and then go through 8 games. And we could have very easily had a 9th game here as well in this showdown format. It's been an incredible journey, and a journey, Zach, that was put on by a couple of great organizations that put so much effort into this.
Yeah, you know, we talked about it less today, but definitely yesterday highlighted, and want to highlight again just how impressive OTD and MIT have been here. I think the website for Fable was fantastic. I mentioned the standings and how nice it was to be able to see not just the points, but also the weapons that they play, the standings, the storylines, the videos that they had playing for some of the names that we eventually saw. Of course, Yaru being one of them, being the highest rated player to come in to the game as far as their elo was concerned. We saw a couple of players really high up in the standings in that finals, Tiger at 2nd and Plague at 3rd. If you want to support Off the Dial, by the way, they do have a shop over at shop.otd.inc that's going to have some apparel that features their logo. They've got a beanie, they've got a shirt, they've got a hoodie, they've even got some stickers as well, and a mug, I think, if you want to decorate your laptop or your home of choice. So really go support them. They, of course, will be supporting the winners with a custom backpack to highlight their journey, as Nine mentioned, through those grueling 6 weeks and into the actual final stages here. But really, MIT and Off the Dial putting on such an efficient show here. And of course, have to say thanks to the TOs and production staff and to the players as well. You know, we mentioned earlier, we got to sit in a little bit on the discussion between the two teams, and they were pretty jovial. They were having a good time. There was some friendly banter and some trash talk. There was some discussion about maps and what to include, what to not include, some talk of trying to get gentlemen's agreements into play. But you could tell there was mutual respect there, and there was a genuine love for the game, which is what was one of the major points of this tournament. The other major one being that these are all free agent players. They're available for your team right now. So if you liked what you saw, especially from any of the 8 players today, but from the entirety of the free agents that participated in Fable, give them a shot. Go try them out and message them and say, hey, I really liked your performance in Fable. We have an opening for, you know, this specific role or these specific weapons. Do you want to come try out? And I'm sure these players would love to find maybe, if even not a forever home, a home to make some new friendships and to get some wins in these high-level tournaments.
And of course, keep it tuned in at Off the Dial. You can see there the Twitter, and also Mulloway IT, who has put on a number of fantastic events. Stormbreak, a major event that they put on, and Off the Dial put on so many wonderful things. It's dangerous to go alone. Of course, everything here with Fable. These are 2 incredible organizations that put on great production, a timely tournament. They have a great time doing it with, well, just from a selfish caster perspective here, they've made it about as easy as Zach and Gemini as you can possibly do. We had all kinds of information that we got to use on today's cast and some fantastic graphics to help illustrate the storylines that were going on today. And of course, the conclusion to any fantastic storyline, you've got to have a few legends. And we would like to congratulate once again Alluring Airfare on becoming the Legends of Fable. We want to thank everybody who participated, who viewed, and who put on this wonderful show. Until next time, everybody, stay fresh.